Yo, what is going on, guys? I want to take a episode to talk about this special little project that I just put out, Cutting Strings, which is my first book on Amazon. Something that I am extremely proud and ashamed of putting out, which is very interesting because why would someone feel shame about putting it out? But I'll explain here in a second. I want to go over, what the inspiration behind the book was, what it means, what it's all about, and then also the process of how we even did it, because I think that would be really interesting for people to learn how that actual process of decision making that, hey, I'm going to do this to actually finishing the book. But let's actually go ahead and start with, the feelings that I have towards it, and then we'll go into what it's all about. So, um, the reason why I wrote the book is because, my personal upbringing was one that is actually very stereotypical. And the reason why I feel so much shame and, kind of not embarrassment, but the reason why I feel so strange putting it out is because I didn't really feel like that my story was, that special, or I didn't really feel that like, I went through enough hardship, or I didn't feel like, I just didn't feel like it was very, noble, right? But there was something deep down inside of me that knew that, one, I wanted to pass this down to my grandkids, and I wanted them to know that there are other opportunities in life outside of the traditional system and other opportunities to succeed if you think outside of the box. And then the second thing is that I knew that if I had read this book when I was 16, 17 years old, and I was, stressed out trying to figure out my way in life and not really sure where to go, I knew that if I had read that book at that time, it probably would have changed the course of my life. And so for me, putting this book out, it really was just to put that book out for that one person who can come across this book one day and really just have their whole world open to a new paradigm and way of thinking. But when it comes to like my friends and family and people who follow me to read this book, it was really embarrassing for me to put out because it's just like, man, this is really just so personal. Like, there are things that happen in this book that unless you're within four walls of living with me, you would have had no idea. Um, so I was a little bit embarrassed about putting it out, and I was also just had a ton of imposter syndrome. I cannot tell you guys how much imposter syndrome I was facing while I was writing the book, and then also, even to this day, I was just so nervous for people to read it, and it's been getting really great feedback. But essentially, what the book is about and why I was inspired to read it, it was just, no, growing up, my upbringing was very traditional. Go to school, go to college, get a job, retire, and that was it, right? And my parents really put a lot of pressure on me for that to be my path, and they sent me to engineering school. They sent me to all these different summer camps to try to find my career. And I was a kid who was literally struggling to breathe in school. I would be drowning in homework, drowning in assignments, drowning trying to keep up with my friends. I really just didn't have what it took. And because of that, because I thought that there was only one version of success and success is only getting a six-figure salary, I thought I was destined to be a failure. And for a long time, I had this identity around me where, I just considered myself a failure. I thought I was destined for nothing but darkness and doom. But it wasn't until I found a new path that I was like, fuck, this is something that's outside of what I thought was real. And I saw that there was an opportunity there. I wanted to pursue it, but I was faced with so much resistance from my family and so much resistance from my friends. I was really all alone in this path. And it's my story about how I found that path and how I was able to grow through it. There's a lot of really shameful moments in the book where, I'm not proud of doing things that I wish I was stronger to do. If I were to go back, I would do them differently. But this is the journey about my dark moments and trying to find myself and trying to find success. And by the end, obviously, you guys know that I am somewhat relatively successful in my endeavors now, but it really was not the case for most of my life. So um, put that book out there, and essentially what the intentions are all about is, just helping my younger version of myself or someone who was in my same shoes, and just say, hey, look, it's okay. There's going to be a lot of shitty moments in your life. There's going to be a lot of dark moments in your life. You're going to grow, but that's all part of the journey. And so that's really what the book is all about, is me finding my path in life and finding and building my confidence and really stepping into who I needed to be in order for me to accomplish my dreams. And it's also a note to pass down for others to guide them on, hey, this is what to look out for. This is, some of the bumps in the road that you guys need to watch out for. So I really, really hope that one day this book lands in the right hands. Some 15, 16, 17-year-old kid who's trying to find their way in life, trying to find their path. And this book just really opens up and, shows them a new opportunity. That's really what it's for. But as far as like putting it out, like I mentioned, something I just wanted to be passionate about. So I'll talk about how I actually got the idea. So I got the idea of actually, let me back up here. Let me back up. I've always been a reader since I was about 16 years old. And you'll actually discover the first moment I decided to start reading is talked about in this book, but I started reading at 16 years old. And ever since then, I've been a ferocious reader simply because the information that I learned to be successful in real life came from books and they didn't actually come from school. So I've always been passionate about reading. And ever since then, I knew that one day I wanted to write a book. It was just a bucket list thing. I was expecting to do it when I was like, 50 years old, but I just always knew I was like, one day I want to write a book. This is something that I want to do. But it wasn't until 2020, I was working out at a gym and my friend was saying, hey, I'm writing a book. And I was like, really, that's interesting. Like, I would love to hear more about the process. Like, I'd be very interested to hear because if she can do it, then I could probably do it too. But the thing is, I didn't really know what to write about. I just knew that I wanted to write a book in general. But she walked me through the process. She just says that every morning she gets on Word doc and she starts writing. And I was like, you know what? That seems pretty easy to do. So that's when I started brainstorming ideas. I really wanted to come up with some type of principle book that I can pass down for like things that I learned by the time I turned 25. That's really what it was all about. I was about to turn 25 the next year. I knew if I could put a book out, then I would have, a book on the things that I've learned by the time I turned 25 years old. And that's kind of where the first inspiration took hold. And so for the first 3 months, it literally took me 90 days. I had it whiteboarded out on this whiteboard here of things I just wanted to include, things I wanted to talk about, things that I thought were important, things that I thought were unimportant. And I would just kind of mind map what I wanted to include and what I kind of wanted the book to be about. And it went through a ton of different versions. There's a lot of things that I added, a lot of things that I took away. And what's funny is that the original mind map that I had when we first started is actually nothing like the book that was released. So once I had the mind map ready, I really just wanted to know how to get started. I had no freaking clue what I was doing. Like, no idea. I had never written a book before, never, gone through publishing school, never, like, I didn't even know where to get started. So the first thing I actually did was I went to YouTube and I typed in how to write a book. That was literally the first thing I did was how to write a book. And I came across a podcast and that podcast led me to more podcasts. And I just started listening and absorbing and soaking in as much information as possible about how to write a book. And I would listen to different sources. I would listen to different experts in the field. And I just got as much information as possible. And there's even a program called Self-Publishing School that I found. And I hopped on a call with their team. I didn't join their programs because I knew I didn't need to. But they walked me through the entire process on how to write a book. They taught me about self-publishing. And I just sought after knowledge. And I thought, man, what a great learning lesson to pass down to someone is that if you don't know how to do something, just simply YouTube it and start learning as much as possible. Because by the end of those 90 days, I felt like I knew exactly what I needed to do to write a book. So, but after the first 90 days, what happened was I got busy. Every single morning at 6 a.m., I started writing because at the time my schedule was actually so packed that I did not have time to write and I did not have the focus to write unless it was at 6 a.m. in the morning. So for 90 days, I woke up at 6 a.m. in the morning and wrote until about 8 a.m. In the morning. And I would average about 7 to 10 pages every single morning. And so it took me a while. But by the time I finished, I had about a 250 page rough draft. And essentially, what had happened is I had these lessons that I wanted to make sure that I provided. And I wanted to make sure that the book wasn't just a book about my life, but it was a book about the lessons and the principles. I really wanted to pass down the principles and the lessons that I had learned on my journey. But the only way that I knew how to actually teach those lessons was by sharing my story, right? This isn't a book where you're going to get facts and studies and sources cited and, surveys and like all these like factual stuff. It's a very analytical or anecdotal book, right? And so the only way that I knew how to pass down my lessons was to actually share the stories in which I learned those lessons. And so that's where it kind of it became a little bit more of a memoir. Intentionally, it was really just a book about lessons that I've learned. But in order for me to teach those lessons, it actually just followed a natural trajectory of my life and my journey over the last 10 years. So that's kind of how what ended up as the rough draft. But right as soon as we had the rough draft, I was so freaking tired of writing. I did not want to go through it again. I did not want to, revise it. I did not want to edit it. I just had a shitty rough draft of all the things that I wanted to teach. And, it was structured in a way that was very chronological, and like you can actually read it and like be like, oh, okay, I understand what this book is all about, but it just wasn't pretty. Right. And because of that, I knew that I was not going to go through it. I knew that I was not going to edit it. I could have let it die right there, or I hired help, right? So the next step was I went on to upwork.com and I just put out an article or put out a job submission for anyone who wants to help me ghostwrite this book. And on the first day, I met this amazing man named Sean. He was, a phenomenal author, and I checked out his stuff and I loved what he was putting out. And he offered to help me edit the book and go through it. And so, I hired him after the first interview on that day. I said, we really clicked, like, let's work together. And one of the first things he had me do was actually fly out to Virginia to meet him in person, because he wanted to understand who I was, my character traits, and, how I talk, how I think, how I act. And so that way he can make revisions on the book and my voice without, taking it too far away from the original. So flew out to Virginia, we worked together. And over the next 3 months, he would revise the book. He would send it back to me. I would make revisions from there, and we would just go back and forth until March, the final version came back. So at this point, it actually had been almost a year in the making. So I think I discovered, or I came up with the idea to write a book in March last year, sat on the idea for about 90 days, took me about 90 days to come up with the rough draft, and then another 90 days to come up with the actual manuscript, right? And so once the manuscript is done, all we really need to do is publish it on Amazon. So once it was published on Amazon, that was really the end of the story. So here's something I will say, though. I'm gonna grab some water real quick. This book is not a huge priority to me, right? The reason why I put this book out is that, one, I want to pass it down to my grandkids one day, and then two, I just want the right person to read it at the right time, which I feel will happen naturally, right? If I wanted this book to be a huge success, I would do a bunch of marketing campaigns. I would do a bunch of podcasts. I'd create a bunch of content about it. But really, I just wanted to put this out there because it was something that I've always wanted to do, and I'm proud of having it done. It is a little bit shorter than I intended it to be, or that I wanted it to be, but actually, looking back on it now, I think that's a great thing, because I'm finding that more and more people are having an easier time finishing the book, which is much better than just getting the book or starting the book. So I'm extremely proud of the book. If you guys want to check it out, it is Cutting Strings on Amazon. You guys can order it. It's in the link in my bio on Instagram, or you can just Amazon, Google, or you can just search in the search bar on Amazon, Cutting Strings by Zach Colburn. It's a small book, 150 pages, but like I mentioned, it's all the things that I've learned on my journey within the last 10 years of, I call it spawning consciousness. So the book starts off in a time of my life from about 12 to 14 years old, where I actually spawned consciousness. And I'm like, wait, what the hell is going on here? Like, who am I? Like, who are these people? So that's where it starts. If you guys want to check it out, would really, really appreciate it. But with that being said, guys, peace.